Like I said before, my name is Alan Jones. I was born and raised in a little mountain town down in Colorado, about 2 hours drive south of here, in Kremling. I don't know if you... Huh?
It's Turkey Town.
Drinky?
Jerky.
Jerky.
And they had the best jerky in their little blue gas station for the longest time.
Yeah?
Yep.
Could be, I don't know. My parents were extremely conservative people. But don't get me wrong, I had a wonderful childhood. I really couldn't have asked for better. I would say around, I don't know, whenever puberty hit and I started to really like be interested in someone, that's right when I realized I was gay. And at that point in my life, I vehemently denied it to myself. I'm like, I can't be gay. I was raised in a Southern Baptist church, and that was wrong. It was a sin, and my parents had made no, beef about that. It's wrong. It's a sin. You can't do that. So at that point in my life, I just sort of became asexual. I just pretended those feelings didn't exist, and focused on schoolwork and just being that like funny guy who was always hanging out in the art room, and that was my life until I graduated and came here in 1999. And I was here for a few years and still in that same sort of pattern, but it was here that I realized kind of what gay was and how it wasn't such a like crazy horrible thing. Although I wasn't really ready to accept it, I found people who had accepted it in themselves, and they were great, wonderful people, and I really liked them. And it was right about that time that I started to like really have a battle with myself. And I knew I couldn't ever really tell my parents because they would not be accepting, and I loved my parents dearly, so I didn't know what to do. And sort of spiraled into this horrible fit of depression, and I would literally spend like 20 hours a day sleeping, and failed all my classes for that year. I was this close to graduating at that point. And anyway, like I said, failed all my classes, and everybody was horribly worried about me. And so my parents kind of like scooped me up and took me back home, and I was just a mess. I was crying all the time. I had no idea what I was doing. And at that point is when I started telling people. First person I ever told, well, to be quite honest, I was so very drunk it wasn't even funny. And I was at a small house party, and this guy just kept calling me a fag. He just said, "You're a fag, you're a fag," And he just wanted to start a fight because, and he kind of got his wish. I started a fight and had to be escorted out just by some friends, not by the police. And I was just aimlessly walking through the streets, and some wonderful friends of mine followed me, and they were, just like, "What's wrong with you? What's going on?" And finally I just said, "Well, I'm gay. He's right. I am a fag. I don't know what to do about it." And they were so wonderful. I mean, I don't even know what to say at this point. They're just great people, and I still love them to this day, although sadly I don't see them as much as I would like. Excuse me. So at that point, that was kind of my turning point. Things started to get better. I told my sister. She didn't shun me like I expected her to, but changed our relationship. And even after all these years, there's a lot of awkwardness there, and I can't talk to her about anything about my partner or any of those sort of like normal dating things that regular heterosexual people kind of take for granted. Being able to go talk to your mom or your dad, like, "Oh, my partner, he's being or she's being like difficult or just a raging something or other," and what do I do? Anyway, so I started dealing with it a lot on my own. I had great friends to talk to, but it was never the same as talking to my mom or dad or my sister. Anyway, I dealt with it for a lot of years. I never really did quite recover from that real like nosedive I took here. And so after a few years, I had met a man, and he lived in Memphis. And again, against a lot of good advice, I went and moved there anyway. And we were there for 4 years almost, and we went through a bit of a rough patch. And I decided I'm moving back here and finishing my degree, God damn it. And and I did. And during like that first 6 months or something, we realized we'd made a big mistake and we should like figure out a way to make it work again. So he moved here with me. He was born and raised in Memphis, had never left the city, came here. It was a horrible, that was a worse culture shock for him, I think, than me going to Memphis, having never lived in a city bigger than this one. So we're still together. It's been 1.5 years now. I graduate in May. Within the last, I'd say, 3 months or so, I finally learned that my mother put it together. After all these years of never having a girlfriend, you know, all these girls that I would always talk about, eventually they get married and leave my parents very confused. My mom finally put it together, and she didn't, of course, talk to me about it. She talked to my sister, and my sister kind of said, well, yeah, you know, he told me a long time ago. My dad is blissfully ignorant and will probably remain that way for the rest of his life, because I have this terrible feeling that if I ever tell him, he will drop over dead, and I'm only half joking when I say that. So, you know, that's like my burden to live with. You know, some people feel like they have to come out and be honest with people, and it builds a better relationship. In a lot of ways it does, but, you know, I know my parents, and if I were to ever push the issue, it would probably break my family. So, I'm not going to do that. Yes?
What's your boyfriend's family like?
Well, they're Southern.
Similar?
No, he came out to his family. It's sort of one of those awkward things with them. Southern black, very religious too, but his mother was sort of a black sheep anyway, and she, for lack of a better way to say it, paved the way for him to do whatever he wanted. So, you know, I could say his family knows, and they all still love him, and he has an enormous family.
Do you guys get to, have you met them?
Briefly. He kind of shields me from them because, like I say, they're Southern and just batshit crazy 90% of the time. So. I don't know. If we ever do decide to have
barbecues then.
They do. They're actually, they own several restaurants across the country, so they are barbecue people. I don't know if we ever get married. Like I say, we've been together now for almost 5 years, so that's kind of the same thing. It's like, well, we could have a ceremony, but we're kind of, you know, married, so I don't know. To me, it doesn't matter. He's one of those people who would love to have a ceremony and invite everybody and have a big party and spend way too much money. I don't know. You never know what'll